Welcome to Healing Broken Trust Podcast. I'm Morgan Robinson.
And I am Brad Robinson.
And we're excited to bring another episode to you. I know it's been a while. A lot has happened since our last episode. One of the biggest things that is happening is we're expecting our second child in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So we are super pumped. We have a little girl on the way. So we're sorry that it's been such a long time. But we have some really great content for you today. But before we jump into the content, I want to share with you, many of you have reached out asking about the free tools that go along with this podcast. And we still have those tools available to you. I've just relocated them. If you go to join.smartcouplesacademy.com, you'll see the Healing Broken Trust Quick Start Guide there. And when you click on it, if you want the whole thing, yes, there is a fee. But if you want the free downloads, just click preview next to each of the episodes. And when you click preview, you'll be able to download the free content that is associated with each episode.
So click preview.
Yeah, so click preview. Preview should actually say download, but it doesn't. It's just the way the program is. You have to click preview, and that's where your free content is. But Brad, you have some great things to say about why, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, I guess before we get into this, it's good to be back.
Yes.
It's good to be talking with you guys.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous because we haven't recorded an episode in a while. In fact, we did record one like 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I said, no, that's not good enough.
Right.
Like we've had other episodes where I'm like, nah, let's not do them. And so let's not record, put that up there. But, no, but I've got a lot of things I want to talk to you guys about. And we're going to try to come to you guys hopefully once a month. I know I've said things before like, hey, we're going to
Yeah, we try. But then we get pregnant.
Well, yeah, we're pregnant and we're exhausted. And our son we had to travel a lot for
that's right.
seeing a specialist for him.
Yeah, he had a surgery, so we had to take some time away.
And, of course, working on the book, working on other things, working on our practice, meeting you guys. That's in person, working with you virtually. It's really been awesome. You guys are great. Very flattering to meet you. And so what we're talking about today, I think this is really interesting. I'm interested by this, so I hope you guys like it. Okay, Morgan, as we get into this, there are 4 main points that I want to get into. And the first is no explanation for why the affair occurred can satisfy the newly traumatized person. One of the frequent questions that people have after an affair is, why did you do this? Why?
Right.
That's a very standard question. It's unusual if nobody ever asks that. However, when a person is traumatized, they're in a state of shock, a state of disbelief, and there's really no explanation that can satisfy the hurt, especially when it's fresh.
That's right, early in the trauma, when they just discovered it.
Yeah, when they just discovered it. However, obviously that can linger. That may go on for months. That may even go on for a couple of years. So there's a lot of factors that go into people's ability to believe the why, accept the why, and it's primarily about feeling secure. So that kind of goes into number 2, though. So enough healing has to take place for people to understand why. So there has to be enough individual healing. Mm-hmm. Maybe I need to see a trauma therapist who can help me with the trauma. Maybe I need to see somebody who does EMDR. And I say maybe. Really, I strongly believe and think everybody needs to see an individual therapist who specializes in EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or another trauma method. EMDR is it's very easy to find a therapist who uses EMDR who takes insurance. It's very easy to find somebody who specializes in that, who can be helpful. But there's other methods that people can use, but EMDR is
the one that we trust.
Yeah, there's good research behind it. It's proven to be effective, and you're very likely to find somebody in your neck of the woods. But talk therapy alone is not enough.
Right.
But you want to go to somebody who's marriage friendly.
Right.
Because when you go and you talk about your marriage, you're obviously going to be talking about a very terrible event that occurred. You're also going to be talking about other events that have occurred in your marriage, in the negative, in the negative cycle. We describe our spouse in the negative cycle. We don't describe them. We're going there to solve problems. So we're going to talk about problems. We're not giving necessarily a full picture of our whole relationship or whole marriage.
Right.
So sometimes therapists can come away thinking like, oh my gosh, you're married to,
a narcissist.
You're married to a narcissist. You're married to Dr. Evil. You're married to, the worst, they're going to, so they may unknowingly give you unhelpful advice.
Right. One-sided, biased.
Yeah,
advice.
without the full picture. But so you want to go to somebody who's marriage friendly, and they may have experience in marriage counseling themselves. You want to, and let them know when you go, hey, I'm here. I'm just here to work through this trauma. I've decided I want to stay married. That's where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's where you're at, and then, let them know. They'll respect your boundaries, what you want. But we had an incident happen where there was a therapist we were referring people to, and around all at the same time, I had a few people that were seeing this person, and at the same time, this therapist was telling every single one of them, like, what are you doing staying married? It's like I quickly quit referring people to that, and they all let me know what was going on, what was happening. And so you want somebody who's marriage friendly, who wants you to be successful. And it's always wise to say, this is why I'm going to couples therapy. But enough healing has to take place for people to understand the why.
Right.
We're in that state of shock. We're in that state of disbelief. That's a very early stage of trauma. But when enough healing does not take place, people struggle with that.
They can't quite understand why, like the explanations for why you did what you did, or what happened. It's almost like it's just too much for their mind to wrap itself around.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the other kicker: is it's a both and proposition. I, as an individual who's been betrayed and traumatized, need to see someone to help me work through this, through the trauma. Just because I no longer have PTSD symptoms doesn't mean I automatically trust you.
Right.
Doesn't automatically mean like our communication's improved. It can help some of those things. It can help us heal. It may, and maybe in a way it does help our communication, because sometimes communication suffers because just there's so much emotional intensity involved.
Right.
And trauma keeps us emotionally intense most of the time.
Right.
Obviously it depends on the person, but
so the first one again was
no explanation can satisfy the newly traumatized person.
Right. So because they're stuck in kind of this trauma state. And then the second one,
enough healing has to take place for people to understand why.
Okay.
Let me say this though, because I was saying it's a both and.
Yes.
So the individual who's been betrayed really needs to see a trauma specialist. The other is, the one who's been betrayed needs to see in the betrayer their genuineness, their authenticity. Often that's described in the affair recovery lingo as transparency.
Right.
I need you to be honest with me. Part of what they're saying is I need to see your emotional authenticity, your emotional genuineness. I need you to let me behind your wall.
Right.
And that sounds really counterproductive for the one who had the affair, because it's like, I need to be here for you right now. And plus, it's also a foreign experience for them. Like, I need to be here for you right now, meaning I've hurt you. I don't need to add anything to your plate. They think when they're vulnerable and letting their spouse behind their wall, that they're adding to their plate.
They're actually, sometimes they'll say, I
I'm
don't want to
giving you
make it
burdens.
worse.
Yeah, I don't want to make it worse.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you my stress or my burdens. But that's also how they can heal.
Yeah.
That's a big part of why people get stuck, is when you start coming to me with your burdens and you start confiding in me in your burdens. You had the affair. You cheated on me. But when you let me be your rock, I begin to feel special and loved.
Yeah, and I can see how that is, but I can also see how it would be like you're taking the mystery away, because probably originally the person who had the affair is more of a mystery. You're like, oh my gosh, I thought I knew you and I don't know you now. And so if they can be authentic or transparent, that meaning they're starting to talk and be more open and vulnerable, then they're probably less scary in that sense. So yeah, you're kind of the rock,
Yeah,
but
you're more predictable to them.
yeah, predictability.
Mystery's taken away.
Yeah.
You're more predictable to them. And, most people who've had an affair would say, yes, I need to be your rock.
Yeah.
I need to let you come to me. I need to help you heal from this. I need to be there, that kind of thing. However, when you as the one who had the affair begin to go to your spouse as your rock and confide in them and share in them, that will help your spouse heal in a huge way.
It builds trust both ways, I think, too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
But when you start confiding in your spouse, and you
they
start
can let it in.
Yeah, and they let it in, but you start confiding in them, sharing with them, here's what I'm really feeling, here's my fears, here's what holds me back, here's my emotional nakedness, things like that. You start letting them in, and you talk about your need for reassurance and your need to be understood. You can do that, and you're vulnerable when you do it, and you don't have a frustrated tone of voice, but you're being vulnerable. They're gonna really start feeling closer to you, and the one who's betrayed is gonna feel closer to you, and they're gonna start, seeing with the things that you say, your reasons why, in a new light. Things are gonna start clicking for them,
and that's actually gonna calm that amygdala. It's gonna make them feel less traumatized, so that they can start to understand the why better. That they can let the explanations in better, because you're doing that by...
Yeah, that's a good point, Morgan. It's going to calm that part of the brain, that amygdala is that fight or flight part of the brain. It's going to calm that because we feel secure. Part of what people are wondering is am I replaceable? Am I enough? Am I good enough? You cheated on me. Clearly I'm not good enough. Clearly I'm not replaceable. Clearly I am replaceable. But when you start going to them, sharing with them, there's what develops is feelings of security, feelings of safety. One of the best tools that people have who've been betrayed to protect themselves is questions. Keeps the guard up, keeps their wall up. So the more questions they ask, it's almost like they're using that questioning and questions and why. They're using that as a way to protect themselves. But when you come to them and you confide in them and you share what they think happened in the affair, because what they're thinking happened in the affair is oh my goodness, this person, you just shared your guts with them. You talked about all this stuff. Sometimes that happens in affairs, but a lot of times it doesn't. But, when you come and talk to me and you confide in me, I feel loved. I feel secure. I'm finding myself being able to start putting this behind me.
Right.
And when that happens, I'm no longer asking these questions because I feel that security. And really what my questions are trying to do is, yes, understand it, but even a bigger picture than that is I'm trying to feel secure. I'm trying to feel safe. And when I know you want me and desire me and you're letting me be your rock, I can begin to relax. And that's a key word. I can begin to relax.
Yeah.
And I don't need my defenses anymore.
That's right. And
so in that one, a primary defense again is the questioning. And so that ties into number 3. Or actually number 3, it ties into number 3. I'm looking at my notes. So the frequency of the pain that a person has after being betrayed leads to the frequency of the questions. So the degree that a person's hurting is often the degree that they're going to be asking questions and want to know why.
Right.
But as they feel safe, as they feel secure, that emotional intensity is going to lessen, that they're going to feel like they can start trusting again.
Right.
And so, and part of how you do that is you lean into the marriage. You start showing your spouse that you're willing to do whatever it takes.
So that level of pain correlates directly with the number of questions.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And obviously there's going to be exceptions to that. In fact, I had somebody just say that recently, and I'm like, you know what, that's true, I've noticed that. And so when there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of questions.
Yes.
And when there's not as much pain, the questions tend to drop off. Avoiders who've been cheated on, typically, everybody has questions, but they're going to have less questions because they're better able to compartmentalize. And so they're not going to be having a gazillion questions.
Right. So they've kind of shut off that self-analysis side of their mind. So they're not really...
They're just better at like getting distracted and keeping their mind off of it.
Yeah.
And cause that's really how you avoid is you get distracted basically. So 3 is the frequency of the pain often leads to the frequency of the questions that are, the number of questions being asked.
Yeah.
And so EMDR can help. EMDR is not enough though. But having a strong bond where I feel like I am being your rock, that helps diminish that pain because it increases my feelings of security. Again, I would say you need to do both. You need to see an individual therapist for trauma, and you need to really work through the work as a couple on your relationship. Couples coaching, we do coaching. Obviously, we worked with a lot of you guys. We have counseling practice. Marriage counseling helps recreate trust, communication, deepen the bond, repair the bond. But people still need that additional work. And, often the one who had the affair needs to do some work as well. But I would not wait to start marriage counseling or coaching after you've completed individual therapy.
Oh, gosh.
That is
that's a huge mistake.
Yeah, that's a huge mistake. That's a ridiculous idea.
Because people say, well, if you just go and fix that, then, then we'll get to the relationship. Or they'll say, oh, if you just fix yourself, then, the relationship will get better.
Well,
but
here's
full picture.
Yeah, it's a horrible idea. It's a ridiculous idea. I'm sure there are circumstances where it probably works for people, but by and large, I think it's one of the worst ideas people can do.
It can be a huge mistake.
You're not addressing the negative cycles.
Right.
You're not addressing the communication between a couple. You're never addressing any of these deeper fears about, can I trust you? Are you there for me? What do I mean to you? Am I important to you? You're not working on that stuff together.
That's right.
You might be dealing with underlying causes. You might be able to dealing with some of the trauma, but you're not really dealing with the work as a couple.
Yeah, the dynamic between the two of you.
Yeah. Now, some people may be so ticked off that they won't start marriage counseling right away.
Right.
Then maybe it's a good idea to do individual counseling. But that happens. But by and large, you need to just do marriage counseling. Even if you're ticked off at your spouse, you need to get a really good couples therapist, marriage counselor, coach, and you got to work on this stuff. You don't need to wait on that because that will bite you in the butt. Okay, last point. Getting the bigger picture, understanding the bigger picture why is often much easier than understanding the smaller picture why. And what I mean by that is, I guess, let me think of a good way to say this. So understanding the bigger picture is easier. Like, okay, yes, we were in a really bad season of our marriage. I can see that.
Right.
So I can understand why you did this.
Right.
I get that. I played a role in some of this as the one who got cheated on. I can see what I did. That helps me understand the why. But usually when there's multiple betrayals, I need to say this. When there's multiple betrayals, more infidelity, more betrayals happens earlier on in a relationship. There's a lot of infidelity, things like that. Understanding the why is going to be harder for people. For sex addicts, when a spouse of a sex addict has been cheated on, because there's often so much infidelity that's occurred, for them it's really hard to understand the why. Because it's like, oh my God, you slept with how many people? You've been to how many prostitutes? You spent how much money? And it's really difficult for them because they don't feel like they have much responsibility in the matter. And that's a topic for a different day. But they don't feel like they have much responsibility in the matter. And the more that you can see what kind of role you might have played in the climate of the marriage, what you might have contributed to it, the easier it is to heal. It's easier to see the why. So often people will say, well, what did I do? You're not going to hurt my feelings if you tell me what I did. Tell me what I did. I need to know why. And so understanding the bigger picture is going to be easier than the little picture. Yeah. So, okay, why did you cheat on me? Well, maybe we didn't have sex for 2 years. We only had sex once in the last 8 years. It could be something like that. It could be, and I just wanted to feel wanted. This person came on to me, and I just grew so resentful. I just gave in. It could be something like that. People can typically understand that. I really got burned out in our relationship. I felt like we were going to divorce anyway because you were coming home and you were seeing all these things. My job got really stressful. We lost our biggest customer, and I thought we were facing bankruptcy because of feeling, previously rejected and trying to talk to you about these things. I didn't feel like I could talk to you. Felt embarrassed about how I was feeling, so I didn't go to you. I went to someone else.
Right.
People can kind of understand these bigger picture whys. But when you get into, okay, when this happened, I already knew about the affair, but then you went and did it again. Why did you do that?
Right.
Sometimes people do that ask questions like that because they don't think their spouse is being honest.
Right.
So I'm asking you why.
Text them after we did X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. Why did you not end it when I asked you to end it? Mm-hmm. Or when I caught you, why didn't you end it right away?
Yeah.
Like those types of why, maybe related to, I don't feel like you're being totally honest to me. Mm-hmm. And you have to be honest in this thing.
You're not being transparent.
Yeah.
There's something's missing.
Yeah. But everything we talked about earlier, I would say helps with those things. This is a new word that we haven't used in a while, proximity seeking. When you go to your mate and you seek your mate out to be your rock and, almost like to be your lighthouse, to be your harbor when you're out in the storms, they feel important to you. You may not feel like you should be doing that after an affair. Like, gosh, I shouldn't be counting on you. I really hurt you. I can't come to you for that. But when you do that, they feel loved, secure. They feel like they can relax. It's ultimately super important.
You're more transparent. Mm-hmm. You're less mysterious and scary.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Morgan. And here's the other kicker: is a lot of people. Okay, maybe we were making love on a semi-regular basis, or very frequently. Maybe we were affectionate. Maybe we did go on vacations. I really struggle to see what I contributed to the affair. I'm really struggling to understand why. And so maybe we had some of these things that make a strong marriage. Maybe we were doing those in our marriage. And so there's not a lot that you're giving me right now as somebody who's been injured that makes me feel secure in our relationship. And that idea of going to your mate, talking to them, being vulnerable, and talking about your own sadness, your own grief, approaching them, saying, I'm open to talking about this affair. You becoming the pursuer instead of a distancer in the relationship.
The one who had the affair.
Yeah, the one who had the affair becoming the pursuer, where you seek them out and you pursue them. You becoming a healer. Those kinds of things, obviously increase our marriage, help our marriage, improve our marriage. But those kinds of things will provide a feeling of security in a way that being affectionate won't.
Right. And let me say
because
this
we had affection before. And
right.
That's not reassuring because it still happened.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it doesn't actually fix, because we had that before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's really confusing.
But you coming to me and sharing with me your vulnerability, we haven't had that.
That's right.
We never really
that's
had
different.
These heart-to-heart talks.
Right.
And we haven't done them in years.
Maybe we had sex, but we didn't necessarily have a heart-to-heart.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't actually vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't get to know your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the other day I've had people say, well, if we both had an affair, how do we go about it? You get into these stalemates, I think, where sometimes it's like, well, who's going to act first, right? Who's going to act first? I had an affair, they had an affair, but this works for both people. Somebody is going to need to step up. Even if both people had an affair, it does apply.
Yeah, all these same things apply.
Yes.
All these same things apply.
Yeah, I just wanted to make note of that.
Yeah. Morgan, those are basically the main ideas.
Okay.
Great.
Briefly recap. Just
sure.
Just
Number one, no explanation can really ultimately satisfy the newly traumatized person. There's so much shock and disbelief. I didn't really. We talked about trauma, but previous episodes today I don't think I've mentioned PTSD symptoms. And so when somebody's traumatized, they're really dealing with PTSD symptoms.
That's
They're
right.
dealing with a very specific type of trauma called betrayal trauma. That's very unique. That's very hurtful, deeply impacting a person. It's one of the worst wounds a person can experience. So that's the first point. Second point is enough healing has to take place for people to understand why.
That's right.
And the frequency of the pain leads to the frequency of the questions. Leads to, the frequency of the pain, the intensity of the pain leads to greater frequency of questions. And then lastly, understanding the bigger picture why is much easier than the smaller picture why.
That's right.
Because, I can see my role in why this happened, or I can understand the climate of our marriage. I can understand how your childhood influenced you. I can understand X, Y, Z. Some of these bigger picture things. But when I start asking more, okay, why did you continue the affair after I found out? Right. That those things can, be more hurtful.
Why did you text her after we had sex or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, those are going to be harder to get to, but you can still figure them out. But everything we talked about on helping alleviate the why still applies to those things.
That's right.
And we are going to try to do this next month. Mm-hmm. So we will see you guys. We will hear from you guys soon.
Or you'll hear from us too.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was confusing what I was saying.
But even if you do want us to hear from you, you can give us a call. We are an actual physical location, and you can actually speak, at least to Brad. You just need to call and make an appointment. And if you'd like to do that, you can learn more about how to do that at healingbrokentrust.com. And, our number's there, but it's 918-281-6060 if you'd like information on how to get extra help. All right?
Yeah, thank you guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Day, or anywhere in between. We'll talk to you later.
Want extra help? Now you have several options to choose from. Work with me personally through one-on-one coaching from anywhere in the world, or self-paced programs that we have available online. Go to healingbrokentrust.com for immediate access. Even if you're healing alone, we have something for you.